Hello, hello. Welcome back to No Me Callo. I won't stay quiet. I'm your host, Jessica Lomelin, and today we're starting a series that touches on a question we've all asked ourselves at some point in our life. What is love? ¿Qué es el amor? And I feel like the wildest thing about love is that we all have an opinion about it. Some people say love is peace, others say love is pain. Some say love saves you, and others say love destroys you. Some believe in love forever, and some don't believe in anything anymore. Some love with fear, some love without thinking, some no longer love because it hurt too much. So we all carry a version of love in our chest, a version shaped by what we lived, by what was done to us, by what we lost, by what we lacked. So today I'm not here to tell you what love is. I'm here to walk with you through that question, to sit together in that doubt, to talk about what it feels like when love arrives, when it shows up without warning, when it moves you on the inside, and even if it doesn't stay forever. Because love doesn't always arrive to stay. Sometimes it arrives to wake you up, to remind you that your heart still knows how to feel, to teach you what you deserve, to show you that you are not broken. So this episode is for those who have loved deeply, for those who lost, for those who closed themselves off, for those who still have hope even if it hurts to admit it. So breathe with me, inhale. Exhale. Drop your shoulders, relax your jaw, and stay there because we're going to talk about the moment love arrives and changes everything. So you know what to do. Get comfortable, grab your coffee, your cafecito, your glass of wine, or a cold beer, and get ready to choose me out with me. I think most people will agree on one thing. Love almost never arrives when we're ready. It doesn't show up when everything is finally in place. It doesn't arrive when we feel like we filled everything. And it doesn't come when we finally feel strong, stable, sure of ourselves. Most of the time, love doesn't even wait for us to be prepared. Love doesn't check our emotional calendar. Love doesn't ask, hey, are you done crying? Love arrives when it wants, when you least expect it, when maybe we already said, you know what, I don't believe in this anymore. I don't want to feel like this again. This isn't for me. I wasn't born to love. And it arrives when we're tired of trying, tired of talking to people who didn't really see us, tired of explaining who we are, tired of having to justify the way we love, tired of feeling like we're always the ones who give more, the ones who stay longer, the ones who forgive more times, the ones who understand more. And it arrives when we're learning how to be alone, when maybe we were finally okay with ourselves, when we weren't looking for anyone anymore, when we had made peace with the idea of walking alone, when we had arranged our lives so we wouldn't need anyone. And right there, when we were just starting to close that door, someone appears out of nowhere. And they don't show up with fireworks. They don't appear like in the movies. They don't arrive shouting, hey, I'm the love of your life. Sometimes they just show up in something as simple as a long conversation at midnight. And it feels light, honest, easy. Sometimes they show up in someone who listens to us without interrupting, someone who doesn't rush to fix us, who doesn't minimize what we feel, who doesn't make fun of our fears. Maybe it's someone who asks, how are you really? And isn't scared when we answer with the truth. They don't leave when we say we're tired. They don't get uncomfortable when we say we're hurting, and they don't tell us we're exaggerating. And right there, something moves inside of us. And it's not a scream, it's not an explosion. It's a small movement, but a deep one. And we start to feel different. We notice we smile without meaning to, that our body relaxes when we talk to that person, that we catch ourselves thinking about them in the middle of the day. We find ourselves checking our phone, not out of anxiety, but out of hope. And not because we're afraid they won't text, but because it excites us when they do. And we want to tell them the small things about our day, things we don't really tell anyone, like, today I heard a song that reminded me of you. Maybe we're walking down the street and we see something in the store and we think, oh my God, they would probably like this. We hear a song and out of nowhere it hits harder. And not because it's sad, but because it connects us to an emotion we hadn't felt in a while. Songs start to hit deeper. Movie makes us cry more easily. And not because we're more sensitive, but because we're more open. Nights might feel longer because the mind keeps wandering, thinking about conversations, about laughter, about things that haven't happened yet but already feel possible. And yes, it's scary, really scary. Because maybe we've been here before, because we already know the pain of a goodbye. And it's scary because we know what it feels like when something breaks and leaves our chest tight. It's scary because we know that when we love, we don't love halfway. We don't love with brakes on. We don't love in half measures. We love with our whole body. We love with our whole heart. So we tell ourselves things like, you know what? I'm not going to get attached. I'm going to take it slow. I'm not going to get my hopes up. I'm not going to feel too much. And we make promises to protect ourselves. We set rules so we won't suffer again. We convince ourselves that this time we're going to be colder, maybe a little bit tougher. But as you already know, the heart doesn't listen to promises. The heart doesn't understand rules. The heart just feels. And still, we allow ourselves to feel. Because loving is not weakness. Loving is courage. Loving is emotional bravery. It's opening the door, knowing someone could walk in, and also knowing they could leave. So this is where I want to recommend a book, and I know that I'm doing this a little bit different. Usually I do a recommendation later in the episode, but not today. And the book is called The 3 Questions: How to Discover and Master the Power Within You by Don Miguel Ruiz. And this book talks about 3 simple but maybe uncomfortable questions. 3 questions we don't always want to ask ourselves. Who are we when no one is watching? Where are we going when we don't know the way? And what meaning does what's happening to us really have? Because when love arrives without warning, those 3 questions wake up inside of us. Because love doesn't only bring affection. It doesn't only bring sweet messages. It doesn't only bring company. Love also brings a mirror. And it shows us who we are when we fall in love. It shows us how we react when someone matters to us. It shows us what we do without our fear. And it shows us what we do with our need to be loved. Because love confronts us with who we are in relationships, with how we love, with how much we give, with how much we abandon ourselves. For example, there are people who, when love arrives, lose themselves. They stop seeing themselves, they stop doing what they enjoy, they stop seeing their friends, they stop taking care of themselves, and they become only someone's partner. They start arranging their whole life around the other person. They stop saying what they feel so they won't bother. They start staying quiet so they won't be left. And other people, when love arrives, shut down. They don't say what they feel. They don't ask for what they need. They act strong. They act like they don't need anyone. They act like everything is fine, even when inside they're just dying to be held. And this book connects to this episode because love forces us to ask ourselves these questions. Who are we when we love? Do we disappear so we won't be abandoned? Do we stay quiet so we won't be uncomfortable? Do we make ourselves smaller so they'll stay? But loving shouldn't cost us losing ourselves. Loving shouldn't cost our voice. Loving shouldn't cost us our essence. Love arrives without warning, but it doesn't arrive empty. It will arrive with lessons, with truths, with questions we don't always want to hear. And whether we like it or not, love always comes to teach us something about ourselves. And people have asked me, okay, Jess, so what is love? And like I've said it before, everyone has their own opinion on what love is. But to me, real love is not having a knot in your stomach, is not checking your phone with anxiety, and is not wondering if today they'll be nice to you. Because let's be honest, if you like someone and the first thing you feel is pressure in your chest, if your stomach tightens every time you see they're online and they don't reply, if your mood changes depending on whether they text you or not, that is not love. That is your body living in survival mode. And that's your body saying, hey, I don't feel safe. I don't feel calm. I have to protect myself. And you shouldn't have to protect yourself from someone who's supposed to care about you. Because real love doesn't feel like walking on glass. It doesn't feel like overthinking every word so you won't bother them. It doesn't feel like editing your personality so they won't leave. Real love feels like peace. Like when you can be silent with someone without feeling like you have to fill the space, without feeling like you have to be funny, interesting, and tense all the time. Like when silence isn't a punishment, it's a companionship. Like when you're tired and you don't have to pretend that everything's okay. You can say, you know what, today I can't. I don't have the energy today. Today I feel a little off. Today I need to be alone. And they don't get mad at you for it. They don't make drama. They don't guilt you. They don't tell you that you're changing. They don't make you feel like needing space is rejection. Real love is someone who doesn't make you feel guilty for having emotions, who won't tell you that you're too sensitive, who doesn't compare you to other people, who doesn't make you compete for their attention, and who doesn't play games with you just to feel desired. Because with real love, you don't have to prove your worth. You don't have to prove you're enough. You don't have to tolerate disrespects just so they won't leave. And you don't have to settle for crumbs because you know you deserve the full meal. You get to be you. The you who sometimes, yeah, might mess up. The one who sometimes cries over things you can't explain. Who sometimes gets tired of being strong. Who sometimes just needs to be held without questions. And they don't love you less for that. They don't see you as a burden. They don't make you feel like your emotions are inconvenient. And that feels like rest. Like when your nervous system finally lets its guard down. Like when you don't have to stay in defense mode. When your chest stops feeling tight. When your mind stops running in circles asking if you're enough. And sometimes love shows up just to teach you that. And it doesn't always arrive to stay. Sometimes it's just gonna arrive as an intensive class in a healthy love. Like an experience that tells you, look, this is what it feels like to be cared for. Look, this is what it feels like when you don't have to beg. And look, this is what it feels like when you don't have to disappear to be loved. And even if it leaves later, its leaving doesn't erase what it taught you. It doesn't erase the piece you gotta know. And it doesn't erase the way your body learned that real love doesn't have to hurt to be real. It doesn't erase the fact that your standards changed. Because after you felt real love, you can't fool yourself as easily anymore. You can't call it love when they ignore you. You can't call it love when they're sweet one day and make you feel invisible the next. And you can't call it love when they ask you for patience while giving you the bare minimum. And yeah, that sometimes is gonna hurt. Because when your standards rise, a lot of people no longer reach them. And then you're left with two options. You either go back to what you already know breaks you, or you stay alone for a while but at peace with yourself. And yes, being alone sometimes hurts. But being with someone who makes you doubt your worth hurts more. So if today you're in a relationship, or in a situationship, or in something you don't even know how to name it, ask yourself honestly, do I feel at peace here? Can I be myself without fear? Can I say what I feel without being punished? Can I emotionally rest with this person? Because real love doesn't take your peace away. It gives it back to you. So I want to put love in two categories, real love versus fantasy. Because many times it's not that we fall in love with a person, we fall in love with a version of that person that we build in our head. We fall in love with what could be, with what we imagined, with what they promise in words but never held with actions. Fantasy is when someone texts you sweet things but is never there when you need them. Yeah, you have long good morning messages, those intense late night tags, but when you're having a heavy day, when you're sad, when you actually need real support, they don't show up, or they show up late, or they show up with a "I'm sorry, I was busy." And that gets repeated so many times that it's no longer an excuse, it's a pattern. Fantasy is when there's chemistry, but no emotional responsibility. It feels amazing to talk, to laugh, to flirt, to feel the connection. But when it's time to talk about boundaries, about clarity, about what you want, about what hurts you, that's when they don't know how. That's when they play dumb. That's when they say they don't want to complicate things. Fantasy is when they promise things, but their actions never change. They tell you, I'm gonna do better. I promise this time I will. I get it now. And you want to believe them because you're holding on to the version of them you saw at the beginning. But time passes and everything stays the same. Same absences, same silences, same excuses, just with different makeup. Real love doesn't just talk. Real love acts. Real love shows up in actions, in consistency, in the way someone includes you in their life, not only when it's convenient for them, in the way they respond when things are uncomfortable, not only when everything's easy. Fantasy looks for you when it feels lonely, when no one else is giving them attention, when they're having a bad day and need someone to boost their ego. Fantasy texts you when they're bored, when it needs to feel like someone is still there waiting for them. Real love looks for you when you are not okay, not only when they need something, not only when they're in the mood. Real love shows up when you're tired, when you're sad, when you're overwhelmed, when you have nothing pretty to offer that day. Real love doesn't only want you in your best versions, and fantasy disappears when there's conflict. It leaves you when you express something that hurt you. It leaves you when you ask for clarity, when you set a boundary, when you stop being easy. Fantasy runs from uncomfortable conversations because it doesn't want to take responsibility for anything. Real love stays to talk it through, and not because it's perfect, not because it never messes up, but because it has the emotional maturity to sit, to listen, to get uncomfortable, to apologize when it screws up, to change even when it understands it's hurting you. Fantasy confuses you. It sends you mixed signals. One day it treats you like you're the most important thing, and the next day it ignores you. One day it makes you feel special, the next it makes you feel dramatic for feeling. It keeps you on an emotional roller coaster where you never really know where you stand. And real love gives you clarity. It doesn't make you guess. It doesn't make you read between the lines all the time. Real love is clear about what it wants, what it can give, and what it can't. And yeah, sometimes real love leaves. And not because it was fake, not because it was a game, but because not everything real is meant to last forever. Sometimes real love completes its cycle. Sometimes it arrives to teach you what it feels like to be truly loved so you won't settle for less later. And yep, it hurts. It hurts because it was real. It hurts because there was a connection. It hurts because there were beautiful moments. And it hurts because for a while you felt at home. But if you ask me, I'd choose a real love that ends 1,000 times over spending years in a fantasy that never truly begins. So if today you're in something you don't even know how to name it, ask yourself this. Does this bring me peace or anxiety? Does this give me clarity or keep me confused? Is this supported by actions or just pretty words? Because fantasy feels intense, but real love feels safe. And even if it doesn't last forever, it changes you forever. And yes, real love can hurt if it leaves because you remember the small things, like a laugh, a phrase only the two of you understood. Did you get home safe? They seemed so simple at that time, but it really meant I care about you. And it hurts more when you remember how you felt being you with that person. Not the person themselves, but the version of you that you were when you were with them. And it's not only the absence of the person that hurts, it's the absence of the version of you. Because with that person, you were lighter, you laughed more easily, you sent long voice notes without shame, you shared things you didn't share with anyone else, you felt understood in things you couldn't even explain yourself. And when they just leave, it's not just the person who leaves, it's the routine that leaves, that good morning that set the tone for you the day, that message before bed that calmed your mind, that feeling of someone is thinking about me. And that hurts in a strange way because it's not a dramatic pain all the time. Sometimes it's a quiet pain. It's remembering something in the middle of the day and feeling your chest tighten out of nowhere. It's maybe hearing a song that wasn't even your song, but now it reminds you of them. It's passing maybe by a place where you once laughed together and feeling like something drops inside you. And sometimes it hurts when something good happens to you and the first thing you think is, oh man, I wish I could tell them this. And then you remember you can't anymore. Sometimes it hurts when something bad happens and your body looks for that safe place where you used to land and it's not there anymore. And no one really talks about that kind of grief. Everyone thinks grief only exists when there was an unofficial relationship, when there were years, when there were big plans. But no, what was brief can also hurt too. What was intense can hurt too. What moved your heart can hurt too, even if it didn't last a very long time. Because you don't measure pain by time, you measure it by how deeply it touched you. What was beautiful hurts more. What was sincere hurts more. What was gentle with you hurts more. What never mattered doesn't hurt. What mattered does. And here's the part almost no one validates. Sometimes losing that connection hurts more than losing the actual person. Because maybe that person isn't the same anymore. Maybe it wouldn't even be the same today. Maybe you wouldn't even fit anymore. But your body doesn't miss logic. It misses the feeling. It misses how you felt when they spoke to you kindly. It misses how you felt when they listened without judging you. It misses how you felt when you didn't have to explain yourself so much. And that's confusing because you think, why do I still miss something that doesn't even exist anymore? And you're not missing the present. You're missing a moment that made you feel alive. And it also hurts to accept that not everything real is sustainable. That not everything that felt beautiful could stay. And that not everything that connected was meant to last. And that doesn't take away from the fact that it was real. And it doesn't take away that it was love. And it doesn't take away that it was important. Sometimes it hurts because you're left with questions, with things we never said, with conversations that we never really closed, with what ifs that your mind repeats when you're quiet. And I mean this when I say it. You're not exaggerating for missing something that was real. You're not stuck for feeling. You're not weak for remembering, and you're not dramatic for crying out of nowhere. You're processing a kind of grief that not everyone understands, but your body does. And grief isn't linear. There are days when you're okay, when you laugh, when you feel light again. And there are days when something small pulls you back to the past. It might be a smell, a song, a phrase someone says with their same tone, a place you didn't expect to remember. And suddenly, there you are again, missing, feeling, taking a deep breath so no one notices. And that's okay. You don't have to get over it fast. You don't have to feel guilty for having loved. And you don't have to erase what was beautiful just to make it hurt less. You can be grateful for what it was and at the same time accept that it's no longer. You can honor that version of you who loved this deeply, who allowed themselves to feel, who opened up, who trusted, because that version of you wasn't stupid, wasn't naive, and it wasn't weak. They were brave. And even though it hurts today, that also says something beautiful about you. It says that your heart knows how to love. It says that you didn't move through life disconnected. And it says you let something real touch you. And yes, one day it will hurt less. And not because you'll forget, but because you'll learn to remember without breaking inside. And one day you'll think about it, and instead of your chest closing up, you'll say, you know what? Yeah, it did hurt, but damn, it was beautiful that I felt this deeply. And when someone new arrives, they won't come to replace anyone. They'll come for you to meet a different version of yourself, more aware, clear, more yours. So if you ask me, yes, love exists, even if it doesn't stay, even if it ends, even if it hurts and leaves scars to feel bigger than your chest, even if sometimes you remember small things, a laugh, a message, a gesture, and you feel that emptiness in your stomach. Love does exist, and it's not only what others give you, it's also what it awakens inside of you. It's what makes you cry, what makes you laugh for no reason, what makes you feel alive, what reminds you that you can still open up, that you can still trust, that you can still feel something beautiful. And if today you're healing, if today you're learning how to breathe without someone by your side, don't close yourself off to love. Don't close yourself off to the possibility that it can return in a different way, maybe with a different person or even with yourself. Close yourself off only to what doesn't take care of you, to what hurts you, to what makes you doubt your worth, to what makes you feel small, replaceable, or not enough. Because the love that's worth it teaches you how to recognize your own value. It teaches you to love yourself. It teaches you to open up without fear, to give yourself without losing yourself, to feel without shame. And remember, love exists even if it doesn't last forever, even if some stories end, even if some people leave, because having loved is already a gift. It's already a proof that your heart still knows how to feel, that your heart still dares, that your heart is still alive. And when love arrives again, it will meet you at your level, not to fill holes in you, but to walk with you, to choose to stay, to remind you of what you always deserve to feel. So take a deep breath. Feel whatever you need to feel. Cry, laugh, remember. But don't close the door to love. Real love, the kind that's worth it, always finds a way to touch you again. In the description of this episode, you'll find the Amazon link with the full list of books mentioned on No Me Callo, I Won't Stay Quiet from the very first episode to today's. And don't forget, there's a new episode waiting for you every Friday. The next episode in this series is called Amar y no poder quedarse, loving and not being able to stay. There are loves that feel real. They're not a game. They're not a lie. They're not a fantasy. They're looks that hold you. They're conversations that lower your guard. They're moments where you feel at home. And still, they don't stay. Because loving is not the same as being able to stay. Feeling is not the same as being able to hold something. Wanting is not the same as being emotionally available. In this second episode, we go into that uncomfortable place where there is love, but there is also fear. Where there is connection, but there's also unhealed wounds. Where there's intention, but not permanence. We talk about what it feels like to love deeply while the other person runs, and how frustrating it is to open your heart and find someone who comes close when they want and leaves when it's time to stay. About that emotional exhaustion of loving with everything you have and someone who can only love you in parts. Because sometimes they're not rejecting you, they're running from what they feel. They're running from intimacy. They're running from the emotional responsibility that comes with staying when love becomes real. We're also going to talk about something really important, how to tell the difference between love and availability. Because you can love deeply and still not be able to stay. You can feel something beautiful and still not know how to hold someone. And that's where it hurts, because you do stay, you do try, you do stay in the uncomfortable conversations, you do choose to be there, while the other person chooses to run. So this episode is for anyone who has ever asked, Why? If there is love, don't they stay? Why? If they say they love me, do they leave when I get closer? Why do I stay and the other person doesn't? If you ever loved someone who cared about you but couldn't hold the love you were ready to give, this episode might hurt a little. But it is also going to help you understand that it was never your responsibility to save anyone. Some people love with everything they have and still can't stay. So don't miss it. You were listening to No Me Callo, I Won't Stay Quiet. I'm your host, Jessica Lomelin. Until next time.